SailGP is owned by Larry Ellison. He's very clear from day one, this needs to be run like a business. This isn't some philanthropic venture. It was to create a commercially sustainable sailing league that had never been done before. Then it was a case of how do we build value in those franchises? There is value to big names investing in sports teams. We wanted to make sure that they were authentic investments. We're not just like handing Kylian some equity and do some Instagram posts and thanks very much. They were very interested from day one, and sailing is a huge sport in France, particularly the offshore water sailing in France, and Kylian sees the long-term opportunity. Really, we're targeting a racing fan. There's the top of the tree in racing fans, which is Formula One, and then a group of other racing properties that are below that. How are we within that group? At our Auckland event, we had 20,000 paying spectators, and 70% of them had never touched a sailing boat. This is extreme sports and crashes and that kind of thing, and that's kind of resonating with the new generation, that's for sure.
Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Business of Sport.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'll start off with one of the more complex questions you'll be asked, but it's a new area, so Let's go for it. What is SailGP?
So SailGP is Grand Prix racing on water in a nutshell. So it's a circuit that goes around the world. We've now got 13 events in iconic locations. We've got 12 national teams competing. It's winner takes all at the end of the season for $2 million. We've got the best athletes in the sport in our national teams, and our boats are all one design. So they're kind of competing in a level playing field. Started in 2019. We're on our fifth season now, halfway through our fifth season, it's expanded significantly since we started, and we've got some big plans for the future.
What's the origin story? Why did it start? What was the thought process and the ambition behind this?
Thought you want me to go back? I think
brief.
I'll try to be brief.
Well, not brief, but I guess the most recent.
SailGP is owned by Larry Ellison, who you may know has a rich history in sailing. He's a hugely passionate sailor. He's won the America's Cup with Oracle Team USA on a couple of occasions. Our CEO is Sir Russell Coutts, who is kind of one of the greatest sailors of all time. He's won the America's Cup 5 times and an Olympic gold medal. So really, the origin came from their vision for the sport of sailing. That if you think about the sport of sailing, there's so many different disciplines, so many different classes, and there's never been a kind of elite series that's existed for the long term. So Larry and Russell were successful in the America's Cup world. We were the rights holders for the America's Cup as Oracle Team USA, and really kind of the business model then kind of flowed off that. I won't go into it, but there's a number of governance challenges around the America's Cup that your viewers may be familiar with, and perhaps we can go into a little bit more detail there. But really, it was creating a business model for the sport of sailing that never existed before.
Tell us about that. I mean, we love governance challenges here. It's a discussion point to often tear your hair out over. But they breed innovation. They breed creativity. Where there's governance, there's issues. There's also generally opportunity to create something that's better affected and kind of creates more opportunity. So, what is it about this structure? What was it about the challenges of the governance within sailing that created a SailGP window?
The America's Cup is governed by a document that was signed by Queen Victoria in 1851, I believe, called the Deed of Gift, and that's ruled by the New York Supreme Court. And
can see where the issues are.
It's a good starting place, right? So, effectively, what it means is you need a yacht club to challenge for the America's Cup, and the holder of the America's Cup, they set the rules and they set the size of or the type and size of the boat. Right? So that's kind of fundamentally the setting the start, really. And then what that means in the modern day is whoever wins the America's Cup, they choose where the event is, they choose what boat it's in, importantly, they take the commercial rights. So what that means is you can you can commercialize the cup on one cycle, but then there's always uncertainty about what's going to happen in the future, because anybody could win, and then anybody could also challenge that winner. So, that means that you can have all these plans for the future. You can set up new venues. You can set up long-term. You can try and set up long-term sponsorship deals or broadcast deals. And actually, when we were the rights holder of the America's Cup, back in between 2010 and 2017, we had broadcasters saying, okay, how do we do a long-term deal? Sponsors coming to us, how do we sign up for a few cycles? You say, well, actually, sorry, guys, we can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, just me saying that, it seems pretty obvious that there's an opportunity within this sport to deliver something that doesn't have that kind of stop-start nature.
And a huge part of this is creating a sport that is also now tailored to, I'd imagine, kind of modern sporting ideals and passion points.
Yeah.
Great technology, fast, engaging is something that resonates strongly with SailGP from what I've seen. Can we start with the boats and the technology? What is it about the boats that makes this such a great event?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, this is a racing property, and we make sure we're clear on that, and that's this isn't a traditional sailing property. That these aren't old boats. It's technologically very advanced boats. They're foiling boats. There's a hard wing sail. So, what that means is that these boats can go 3 times faster than the wind. And they're just, hugely efficient machines. And, quite often I have people say, oh, where's the motor in these boats? Actually, it's the wind. And, you kind of, the wind's not very strong, but these boats are foiling at almost 60 miles per hour. So, we actually produce all of our own boats at our facility in Southampton. But yeah, we're constantly evolving the boats, making sure that they're at the cutting edge of innovation. We just introduced a new foiling system actually to kind of create more efficiency there and kind of make them more durable, but also enhance the speed. So, yeah, they're at the cutting edge, that's for sure.
So, for those uneducated in traditional sailing, if we can call it that, what is that main difference technologically from a foil to what you would class then as a sailing boat?
Yeah, well, I think if you think about a traditional sailing boat, the kind of the wind is powering the boat off the wing sail. But with our boats, and then what that means is there's the hull is actually in the water most of the time, which creates a lot of drag, which means the boats can't actually go. That they go reasonably fast, but there's a certain amount that they can go. But with foiling boats, you create lift that lifts the boat out of the water, and then there's no drag on the hull at all. So they're hugely more efficient in the speeds that they can get to. And they're not powered by the wind in the traditional sense. It's really the kind of riding moment between the foil and the wing sail and how that kind of propels the boat forward. So it's a hugely complex engineering feat, but obviously it just delivers a much more compelling product.
And was this a key concept at origination from SailGP? This was a new design of boat, or was this a modification of something that was already being raced?
It is a modification, and we're modifying them all the time, but it was a modification from the AC50 that was used in the America's Cup in 2017, which itself was a modification of the boats from the 2013 America's Cup. And they're constantly evolving the whole time. And the America's Cup boats are also evolving, which is cool, and it's fantastic to see that. We believe though that the boats themselves, whilst being fantastic and hugely innovative, we believe that you need to have the same boats to create a race that actually is compelling to watch. Even in our races, they're 15 minutes in duration, more or less. And the top team versus the bottom team, there's still kind of 4 minutes of difference between the two boats. So imagine these boats having different kit. It'd be, the winner before you started, and that was certainly what we didn't want to have as a sports league.
So this is the thing I find really interesting, because it's something that often dominates other sports like Formula One, where you have a similar set of rules, but let's say Formula One doesn't centralize and make cars as a as a single body and then distribute them amongst the teams.
Yeah.
There are always different modifications. How do you go about then, I guess, building and creating these foils centrally? How much do they cost, firstly, to build?
Well, a boat itself is the whole thing is about $5 million.
Okay, $5 million, and each team will have one.
Each team has one boat, and then we have a set of spares that we take on tour if there's damages and so forth. So and then there's quite a few I guess close calls on our boats. So, there's instance, and so we're constantly supplying kit to the tour from our facility in Southampton.
Who picks up the cost of that? Is that distributed to the teams, or is this centralized for SailGP?
Yeah, it's we have a central cost system. So I'm not sure we'll come on to that, but it's the teams pay two central costs. One is for shared services, which is kind of logistics and kind of race management, umpires, all those things. And the second one is for the capital assets. So, we kind of say at the start of the year, here's what that is going to cost. And then as an organization, we kind of work within that parameter to deliver the boats over the season and then any innovations on the boats thereafter.
So what you'd really say is having this structure, this model, ensures that the winners are really the best sailors. We're not looking at the dependence on technology. We're not looking at someone's got the better car and therefore is driving better.
Yeah, it's absolutely the best sailors. It's also the way that you sail the boats as well. You have to really push the boats, and so you can't hang back. And so there's that side of it. There's also the data side of it. And our philosophy from day one was that we have open data source for all the teams, which means that the lower teams can see the settings that the higher teams have, and they can learn from them, and then that closes the gap as well. But I think it's been really interesting to see that the top teams in SailGP are really diving into the data after every day and learning from that. And the more kind of traditional style of sailing, of kind of like going with feeling, is not the way to do it anymore. And that's been a really interesting development for us.
Tell us then a little bit about these teams. So you mentioned at the beginning that they are national. How do you look at that from an ownership perspective? And can you take us, I guess, from the early stages of setting up when you created those first teams to now where you're going with the centralization to privatization model as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to begin with, we actually set out to have it a fully franchised system. And, we had a group of owners in the room, and we were kind of sat around the room thinking, we're going to set up this league, and, it's going to be really easy, and we'll all kind of put money in a pot and kumbaya, we'll all kind of work together, and, it'll be easy to run. It turned out pretty quickly that it's just really hard to run things by committee. And we wanted to move quickly. This would have been early 2018, and we'd obviously just come off the back of the America's Cup, and we had a lot of knowledge, and we had we had boats. We had boats already. We were building boats, and really we kind of certainly Larry Ellison took the view that he doesn't run his businesses like committees, and we're not going to get anywhere. So he took the view that he'll take it on, and then people can buy teams or franchises off us in the future. And it was really a kind of sense of how can we move this business quickly in these first years and make the right decisions for the future of the sport and SailGP, rather than having to kind of coalesce a group of owners to agree with it. And so
sorry, just on that, did Larry pick up the costs that really had to be covered, I guess, because quite often you sell early franchise slots because you need that injection of capital early.
Correct, yeah. And we're fortunate enough to have Larry, who's hugely supportive of us as a league. He's very clear from day one, this needs to be run like a business. And this isn't some philanthropic, kind of venture. That it was to create a commercially sustainable sailing league that had never been done before. So that was the primary objective there. So yeah, he clearly we were very lucky to get that support from him and continue to do so. But yeah, then it was a case of how do we build value in those franchises. and those teams to then, and also build a commercial framework that investors want to come into. And I think we've seen the growth of the league, and that's also been part of the attraction, I think, as we've looked at investors coming in along the way. And that was always our objective. The first 5 seasons was build a property and then carefully choose owners who can come in and help us deliver what we're trying to do as an organisation.
I mentioned to you outside, it seems a bit like what the 100 have done, the ECB centralising the ownership of the franchises, and then when the competition's in the place, should we say, where it's proven its value, but also is now really going to benefit from that independent investment to take it to that next level. They've gone out and tried to find the right partners. What to you does a really good partner look like?
Yeah, I think it's certainly someone who's passionate about the sport. I think you do have to have that kind of fire inside of you to really move the sport of sailing into a different place. I think it's obviously somebody who to have a business plan to come in and so it's that you want to be here, but also you have a business plan that's going to take your franchise and turn it into something that is hugely valuable, because then other owners see that and say, oh, well, that business model is working, and we can emulate that in other franchises. So that was I think those two things are kind of the key aspects. Obviously, you want to ensure that they have the right financial backing. I mean, that goes without saying. I'd imagine that would be the case in any other sport as well. But yeah, definitely business plan and a huge passion for what we're doing.
You've had traditional investment from companies that are very active in sport, like let's say an Ineos, where you've got multiple kind of investments in and around. Do you have many that are coming in fresh, should we say, independent from other sporting investments, looking at it because they are particularly sailing incentivized?
I think there's a broader trend in sport right now that private equity companies are looking at assets around the ecosystem, and certainly that there's a lot of I'd say there's a group of growing sports that have entered the market. We're getting a lot of interest in that kind of private equity space. We're certainly very careful in how we look at deals with those type of organizations, in that we certainly think we want those companies to have a long-term horizon. This isn't a kind of buy a team for a season and then spin it in a season or two. We want to make sure that they've got a plan that, as I said before, helps commercially build SailGP as an organization, and that they're going to be around for the long term. But yeah, we've definitely seen that interest come into us from people who have never even touched a sailing boat in their life.
So I want to come in and purchase a franchise.
Yep.
What does it cost me?
Today, the lowest amount is going to be $50 million US.
50. What did it start at?
Good question. I think in the early days we were actually looking at people just to come in and underwrite the costs of teams. So as you referred to earlier, kind of Larry Ellison gave us a good capital injection to begin with, but then for us to grow, we needed to add teams, and in those initial transactions, we were really looking at how could people just help support those teams. And then that's developed over time. We kind of then we kind of I guess got more sophisticated in how we were looking at this. We've got some more sophisticated financial support in how we were looking at this. And then we went up to 20 million, and that was our bar. And then we've seen that just rapidly grow over the last 3 or 4 seasons. And
is that increase in cost partly driven by the scarcity value and demand that you're seeing for these franchises? Yeah, definitely. I think it's also the growth of the league itself. So when in season 2, when back in 2019, 2020, it's also COVID as well during that period. Coming off the back of COVID, we were still pretty small, and you go into a room and people are like, what the hell is SailGP? What are you even talking about? Whereas I think now we've
certainly more established. We've got a long way to go, don't get me wrong. But yeah, we kind of, that there is a better understanding of SailGP as a property. And so, yeah, there's a growth of the league, but also we're seeing that the commercial model of these teams is now working. And I guess 3 years ago, we were still saying, there's quite you're going to be a loss-making team to begin with, and sometimes that doesn't work. But whereas now we're seeing that certainly 3 or 4 of our teams this season are going to be at least break even. So investors are looking at that and thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to have to fund a load of losses to begin with, and that's obviously pushing the along with your point around kind of demand and scarcity. There's only so many teams, and I think the other thing with SailGP, which is probably different to other sports properties, is you actually own that national team.
Yeah, this is what I'm quite interested to understand.
So you actually own the national market in a way. Yeah. Obviously, we retain the rights for the event in that national market, but it gives you almost like have a grassroots angle to it in that it's not your responsibility, but you'd work with the National Sailing Federation, and you almost become the elite level of the sport in that country. So that's something different.
Because that's what I was going to ask. Why have the national element to it when it could just be a completely different brand or name attached to this? What's important about having GB, Canada, etc.?
Yeah, I think it initially it gives a fan base in each country, and then secondly it gives a sailing talent pool in each of those nations. And I think we've been careful to select nations that have good sailors who can compete at this level, and B, have a established fan base to begin with. So kind of rather than us turning up to an event in Auckland and saying here's all these teams that have got funky names, and the locals would just say, okay, well, I'm not sure who to cheer on here. And then really it was as I say, it gave us that fan base to begin with. And it's something that is innovative in the world of sport as well. It's not often that you get the opportunity to own a national franchise. So it's something that we were really wanting to go with to begin with, and we also believe it helps us with marketing in that country too. So not only is there a fan base, but if you own a team in New Zealand, let's just say, you're going to be really keen to make sure that the press in New Zealand knows about us, the media knows about us, and you help us with the marketing in that country, because then that helps the growth of your franchise too. So that was also a part of the thought process.
One thing around the teams that is interesting alongside the ownership is Team GB's then Emirates GB. Yeah. So where does that kind of ownership piece, is that the owner then can look for a title sponsor to come in and work with them on that commercial element and try and drive value on a naming rights deal as well? But it would have to remain as the country, I guess, does it?
Yeah. I mean, initially we were kind of thinking, do we want to have naming rights partners? And, is that the right move for us? We want to build our brand equity, and, it needs to be the SailGP team in that country. But then really, I think that the commercial model won out here, and it was, we needed that asset in order for the teams to be, commercially successful. But then at the same time, we wanted to retain some kind of element there. So we've given the teams, I guess, guidance on how the naming framework works. And with the kind of Emirates GBR just kind of worked for them as a team. You might see that, for example, our New Zealand team is kind of transitioning to become the Black Foils now, and so we're retaining that national affiliation, but we're becoming a bit less strict in how we police that, I guess.
And Brazil's Mubadala, is that right?
That's Mubadala, yeah. So it's Mubadala Brazil. They're a partner with us at the league level, and then they have a great relationship with the team there, and they do a lot of business in Brazil. And when we kind of floated the idea, they jumped at the opportunity.
Tell us about the big news in the French team getting Kylian Mbappe to come in. We've seen the value of big sports people invest in, franchises outside of their sport. This is a really interesting one.
For sure. I think that the way we've looked at that is, yes, there is value to I guess, big names investing in sports teams. We wanted to make sure that they were authentic investments. So, we're not just like handing Kylian some equity and, do some Instagram posts and thanks very much. It's really about, if someone's going to invest in our team, they have to be investing in the team, and they have to, in doing so, they care about the team and they care about their money, and they, that they want to see that the value in that team grow. So, yeah, the opportunity arose via the transaction that we did for that team with the Accor Group. And Sebastian Bazin is the CEO of Accor, is hugely passionate about the sport, and they see a lot of value in the sponsorship that they've driven, and it almost became a natural conversation to move that onto ownership in some way, and then put through that the conversation with Kylian started, and his team, who've been great to work with, they were very interested from day one. And sailing is a huge sport in France, particularly the offshore sport of sailing in France. And Kylian sees the long-term opportunity.
And when you're going through this process with someone like him,
Do you have a lot of direct interaction with these individuals? Is it done through intermediaries? How do you go through, I guess, that process to ensure that you get, exactly as you said, the right people on board, not just looking for a different type of outcome?
Yeah, well, look, I don't personally have Kylian's number in my WhatsApp groups. But yeah, look, we talked through his team for a long period of time. Obviously, they already have the relationship with Accor in any case. So,
is that Accor because they were sponsoring PSG, right? Is that Accor hotels and?
Yes, yeah. And they have a personal deal with Kylian as well. So he almost came recommended by them in any case. And really talking to his team, they have almost like a venture arm that they're looking for what's after football for Kylian, and that they were very passionate about, again, what I just said before about this being a real investment, and how can Kylian kind of make this investment work for him over time. Kind of at the very top level, Kylian is obviously endorsed that, and he's fully behind the team, and we're looking at doing some really cool things with him over the coming weeks, or a month, sorry. So watch this space on that one.
Amazing. You mentioned there, and I want to get back into it. I deliberately passed over it, but I was fascinated because you said the word break even. Break even and profit generally are not words we hear often in this room. Sustainability is normally how few millions can you lose. What is the business of these teams? Because that's what makes them attractive to investors as well now, as you've highlighted.
Yeah.
How do the teams make money?
First and foremost, it comes down to a number of cost controls. And I'll come on to how they make money in a second. But in our view, any league needs to work and needs to have some kind of cost cap. Otherwise, you get yourself into it. Certainly, we've seen that in other sports. Teams can get themselves into trouble. So from day one, we were clear that we wanted to have that cost control. And in a way, as I explained earlier, we control all of the costs through the central services and the boats. And that's kind of a huge barrier to entry in the world of sailing. You have to build a boat, which costs you 50, 100 million, and whereas because you have to do all the design work, and we've already done the design work. So really, it's a fundamental principle. Let's make sure we cap those costs, and then the team costs are also capped. So that was principle number one. And then from there, it was how can we give each team equitable rights, but also how do we split up the league and team rights to make this work for both parties? Because, our view is, you need strong teams to have a strong league, and you need strong league to have strong teams. And, that almost a symbiotic relationship in many ways. But the fundamental revenue driver for teams right now is sponsorship. So, they have a huge amount of branding space on their boat. As a league, we actually retain some branding space for Rolex, for example, as our title partner now. But the teams have branding space all over the rest of the boat. It's a pretty significant floating billboard if you
like an F1 car.
Yeah,
right?
But it's bigger.
Yeah.
But
it's the same type of model. That's what
I'm sorry, it's same type of model in a sense.
Big is great though.
Yeah. There's more space to brand on our boats, but probably less eyeballs at the moment, unfortunately. But so they get the branding spot on the boat, and then we do have a broadcast distribution model. Effectively 50% goes to the teams of our broadcast rights, albeit broadcast rights is not a significant income stream for us at this point of time, as you'd expect. And then, there's obviously hospitality, there's kind of merchandise and so forth that each of the teams can generate income from. And we do have a model whereby teams can work with SailGP for their event in territory as well.
Yeah.
So again, that's not a huge money spinner today, but it may be something over time that delivers value to the team.
What is the cost cap?
10 million.
Numbers-wise, 10 million.
US.
And what's included in that cost cap?
Everything.
Okay. So that's what you can pay
sailors,
that's what
accommodation,
you can spend.
travel, practice, training, business support, commercial marketing, boats, logistics, everything is within that. Now, we're actually in a discussion with our teams right now. I don't think that quite works in a sense of, yes, we want to control the costs, but there's some things we want them to spend money on, like social media and marketing, and having a cost cap today means, we can't do that massive marketing campaign that we wanted to do in New York City. So there's a few things that we're kind of looking at now to almost like take out of that cost cap, which kind of makes sense for us to kind of further the commerciality of the league.
If you didn't have the cost cap, what's the areas or the area that you fear teams could spend too much on and I guess lose some of that financial control? Where could that money seep away, I guess?
I think fundamentally the challenge in the sport of sailing is the actual design and the build of a boat. So we've almost like taken that away by kind of doing that centrally anyway. And you see, these America's Cup teams, their budgets are for a cycle are 150 million pounds. A lot of that is spent on design time, build time. So that's where we've seen in the past costs get away from teams in sailing. But then the next thing is it will be athletes. And it will be salaries will increase. And look, we want this to be the place where the best of the best compete in sailing. But there is a situation where I think we've probably got 5-6 of the top people in the sport who are going to become attractive to people, and fair play to them that they've made themselves attractive for teams. But in doing so, we don't want teams to create mega teams and then go out of business by doing so.
Yeah, similar, I guess, in football models, right, where you players or the talent is the area where a lot of the money can start getting out of control.
Yeah, for sure. And I think today we're in an okay space, but I guess fundamentally we've set SailGP up to be an elite platform for athletes.
Yep.
And so, if you're a kid at a sailing club or wherever you are in the UK or Australia, you can say, okay, there's this professional level that I can aspire to be at. Oh, and I'll make a career. So, we do want athletes to be making, a career out of SailGP, and they should. But obviously, you kind of need to ensure that you have that control in place for in future when those salaries start to get inflated.
Appreciate you can't say specifics, but what a ballpark kind of top salaries look like in this area? Are we low hundreds of thousands, high millions? Where does it really sit?
I think it's somewhere in the middle of that range.
It's incredibly diplomatic.
I think if you go to the America's Cup, then all bets are off there. There's some pretty significant money that changes hands for the best of the best. But the other thing we've tried to do with our athletes is also give them equity in teams. And I know there's been other sports properties that have looked at doing that as well, but we think that's been a really strong way to retain or bring the best athletes in. So for example, in season 1, we had a really strong British team, but Ben Ainsley wasn't in the team.
Yeah.
Now, if you're British, you kind of Ben Ainsley is synonymous with British sailing in many ways. So, we actually did a deal where Ben received equity in the team if he kind of brought in an investor, and it was almost like an incentive for him to get that team going. So yeah, that's kind of been something certainly new in the world of sailing for sure.
Do you think they understand the value of that?
They do. They do now.
Yeah. Well, now I'm sure
they do. I think. I think if Ben was one of those early teams that came in. So if you're talking about he got some equity, and it's almost sweat equity in a sense that he's earned that by being part of the team, being the CEO of the team, being on the boat, growing the British team. And now he's got, a chunk of equity in a team that's worth over $50 million. So, yeah, I think they all appreciate that. And I think, our top athletes, Jimmy Spittle is another one. He's now the co-owner of the Italian team. And he's the CEO of that team. And, Jimmy's had a fabulous career, and he's worked with Larry and Russell for many years. And in a way, it's kind of payback for all that hard work. And now they've got a real business that they can run, as well as the salary that they can earn just as a sportsman.
What are the team structures, and how does the nationality versus the actual sailors in the boat, is that all it has to be?
Well, yeah, nationality is a hot topic amongst our teams. We want to retain an element of nationality, so we kind of we're just, I guess, working out what the best solution is right now. But in terms of the athletes on the boat, there's 6 athletes, and 3 of them have to be from the country that they're affiliated to. So straight away, we actually dropped that from 1 down to 3 last summer. Straight away, a transfer market opened. And so, the Canadian team, for example, took Giles Scott, who was with Ben Ainsley and his team, and he's with Ineos, the America's Cup. And Giles now, he's part of the ownership group in Canada, and there was a transfer fee paid between 2 sailing teams. That's never happened before. So, that's it's the start of something to come.
Does that transfer fee fall into the cost cap?
Yeah.
Okay, so they basically got to ensure they free up now an additional
amount for
part of that
fees,
in transfer fees. Do you think now that that's happened, this will become a far more prevalent action?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, look, commercially, it's very attractive to have a successful team. There's kind of 2 success factors for each of our teams. One is performance on the water, and then performance off the water, and the 2 live very closely alongside each other. So yeah, there's definitely there's more prevalence of that. What we've actually seen, though, again, this is good for the athletes, that a lot of the teams are tying up athletes on long-term contracts. So, up until recently, it was like, okay, we'll give you a contract for a year and, see how you go. But now, for example, the Italians, I know, for example, they've got 5-year deals. And that's great for those athletes, they've got certainty, they're not beholden to where the America's Cup's going to go. They, it works for that athlete. And yeah, again, I think we've got to make sure that this is controlled. What we can't afford to happen is costs go out of control for teams, and and that blows up the whole commercial model. So that's something that we're very careful about, and we want to make sure that we keep those cost caps at a reasonable amount.
Turnover, then, what's the average turnover of a team? How much can we generate in a season to hit that break even mark and match those costs against the expenditure?
The high performing teams in a commercial sense, around 8 or 9 million US.
Okay, wow, and a lot of that then generated from sponsorship. So they're doing a great job on.
Yeah, unbelievable. If you look at our Brazilian team, we've got a CEO called Alan Adler. He's actually an Olympic sailor from a long time ago. He actually competed against Russell in one of the Olympics in the 80s. He's the promoter of the Formula 1 Grand Prix in Sao Paulo. So he's already got a pool of kind of influential sponsor or commercial and marketing people in Brazil. And so for him, it was almost like a natural extension of those deals that he was doing in any case, and he's been hugely successful in their first season as well. So, that's really good for us as a league that it's kind of really showing that you can come into SailGP and be successful from day one.
Is franchises the right term? I keep saying franchises. How do you talk teams?
Yeah, I think we say teams. But
will you? People know what it means.
Yeah.
Will you continue to add teams? What's the growth plans like based on? I guess the existing teams you have, but also taking advantage of new opportunity.
Yeah, another hot topic for us as a league right now. Look, we're at 12 teams today. We added 2 teams this season, so Italy and Brazil came into the league this year. Italy's a huge sailing market, and Brazil was our 3rd rated media market. And they didn't even have a team.
Really?
So, it wasn't a no-brainer because there's a lot of work to do, but it's kind of a market that we're looking at. The point being that as soon as you add a team, you add a much more engaged market to SailGP as a league. And so all the teams in a way benefit from that growth. Now we're seeing much better TV numbers in Italy. We're seeing much better TV numbers in Brazil. And that's good for everyone. So, I mean, there's obviously the argument, a kind of scarcity of teams versus how many do you add. But right now, for example, we don't have a team in China. We don't have a team in Japan, and we don't have a team in Mexico. And, there's other South American markets to add to Brazil too. So what we don't want to do is just close off and say, thanks very much, we're closed for business. There's obviously a sporting side to that as well. There's only so many boats you can get on the water in a race, and then there's a technical side of you've got to deliver more boats to the racetrack too. We're actually looking at our format like right now to kind of almost, we will possibly move to almost like a Group A and Group B type system, but what that means is we can actually hold more races within our broadcast window. Because what happens right now, we run a race and then the boats have to reset, the teams have to get ready, and then we run 4 races in an hour and a half broadcast. But if we run 2 fleets of races, as soon as one race finishes, bang, next race starts, and we actually see in our viewership data that as soon as a race finishes, bang, viewership drops. And it's hard to get that viewership back when you start another race. So, and our breaks are typically 10 minutes, or maybe a little bit more, depending on the venue. But if we can just go bang, 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 then you don't get that viewership drop off. So that's another consideration of ours. So yeah, we think, to answer your question in a long way, we think probably 20 is the right number. And you have kind of like 2 pools of 10. You look at other leagues. You look at the NFL. They've got 32 teams. We're not the NFL, of course, but there is enough room for those teams to all live side by side. Look at the Premier League's got, and it's not a franchise model, but there's 20 teams in the Premier League, so they all seem to do pretty well. So I think it comes down. I think 20 is probably the right number.
I guess the key is just making sure they can all meet the specifications and objectives of what you demand from a team, so that you keep that quality running through each thing. And as long as people can do that, and you can have that, I guess, consistency.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key is also not doing it too quickly. And we've been very careful in our growth journey at SailGP that we'll add a team, or we'll add 2 teams, or we'll add 1 venue a year. We're not all of a sudden going to go, right, we're selling 8 franchises and, highest bidder wins. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to, we need to continue to grow, on a consistent, in a consistent way. And, it might be that we get to 14 or 16 teams and we think, wow, that's the right model for us. And then you kind of stop it there. So yeah, you kind of, as we progress, we kind of, evaluate where we are as an organization, and then we take the decision from there.
You mentioned broadcast not being massive at the moment. What are the deals? What's the setup of that at present?
Well, yeah, we've got deals all over the globe. So in the UK with TNT, who are a new partner of ours, but they're a really good partner, and they're they're supporting us with the promotion of our races. We're with CBS in the US. So, CBS Sports show our racing live, and then CBS National Network show our highlights. And we've got some really good numbers on CBS in the US. We got kind of 1.8 million average viewers for our highlights, which they reported to us as the highest they've had in sailing for like 40 years. So, that shows that, we're actually starting to cut through when we get, airtime on the right networks. Canada is huge at the moment as well. We're on TSN there. New Zealand, we're on Discovery, which is a free to air. Australia, Fox Sports.
So this seems very good. What I guess if you say you're not maybe where it's not a huge part of the business yet, where can it improve? What do you need to do to make it bigger? Is it just, should we say, the commercial size of deals, or is it some form of the distribution play as well?
Yeah. I mean, look, this initial 5-year period, at least, we've really been building an audience, and this has been, eyeball led. We kind of really want to create a fan base. Now, the first 5 years has been building a product, creating a fan base. Next 5 years is how do we build an audience off that? So, really, the media deals, it's when you're looking at generating income from them, it's quite a binary equation in a way for the broadcaster. If we generate subscribers to Canal Plus in France, they're gonna, they're more inclined to provide a rights fee to us. Yeah. And so that's really, I think we'll see over the next 5 years, as we build more of a fan base, a genuine fan base too, and we build audience in each of our territories, that there might be more of a, I guess, more of a demand from other broadcasters in territory to take our rights.
Who is your audience? Do you do a lot of work into this? What type of person currently is engaging with sailing? Is it a different type of person, I guess, was what I'm really getting at, to maybe what a core sailing product historically has been?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's, I guess within the sailing industry, I think we divide opinion probably in terms of, traditional sailors. Oh, this isn't sailing, and it's not, so it's not for everybody in that space, but they'll still watch it. Yeah, hopefully
they know that normally happens.
Yeah, it's kind of like when the 100, for example, you have I'll still watch it. Yeah, it's on TV. I'll watch that game. But yeah, it's so yeah, there is that traditional sailing fan base, but we know that this product isn't going to have that longevity if it's and there are a lot of sailing fans in the world, by the way. I think we think of it in a British sense far too often, in sailing, Ben Ainsley won a few Olympics and we don't really know about it, but if you go to other markets, there's a lot more interest. So there is that audience, but really we're targeting a racing fan. There's the top of the tree in racing fans, which is Formula One, and then there's a group of other kind of racing properties that are kind of probably below that, and it's like, how are we kind of within that group of properties? And we're seeing more and more fans who aren't sailing fans. So for example, at our Auckland event in January, we had 20,000 people, paying spectators, ticketed for the event, and 70% of them had never touched a sailing boat. Really? So we're seeing that change in the audience. So I think the other big difference, and certainly in the last 12 to 24 months, has been our TikTok and our YouTube channels. The growth there has been absolutely off the charts, and our content team have done a fantastic job of providing the right content to those audiences, and so our audience is just the age demographic has just gone whoop. And there's still that kind of 45 to 55 affluent audience, but then there's this new cool TikTok audience. Not saying that they're not cool, but it's a new cool audience who are really into the foiling generation. This is extreme sports and crashes and spills and that kind of thing, and that's what they're really engaging on. And those 15-second clips. I think you kind of have the classic the boomer meme is, create me a viral clip, please, social team. Yeah. And our social team have done that 5 or 6 times, and there's some of our clips where for example, one of our New Zealand teams kind of fell off the side of a boat and was just hanging there, that's got about like 50 million views on TikTok. You think, wow, that's kind of resonating with the new generation, that's for sure.
Especially if you've got speed at the heart of it, right? It's exciting. And then you said you get crashes, you get this kind of content in there, which is exciting. It's exciting sport. That's what resonates. And particularly now in this time where you can clip things up, you can package and show your sport in a very different way to having to show a full race to get a new fan involved.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been the difference, I think, as all sports have seen over the last 10, 15 years. You're less reliant on that broadcast audience to generate fans of your product. And, I think you're seeing more in the market now. People don't even watch a lot of full matches of sport. It's kind of, certainly, if I look at my own kind of friendship group, we're not all sitting down and watching a full day's Test cricket or even a full 2020. You're on your phone and you're kind of like, okay, those 2-minute highlights of the Arsenal match last night. I've just tuned into that. So it's definitely changed a considerable amount. And I think new properties like us coming in can actually just ride that wave.
Another way we've seen a lot of growth within sport, and particularly, should we say emerging sports, is leveraging the value of the individuals, the athletes. Mm-hmm. Now, talent can often be as big as a lot of the teams that they play for. Yeah. And that's a fantastic marketing tool for those clubs or teams or whatever it may be. Are you leveraging the value and the profile of the sailors? Are you helping them, I guess, also create some value alongside it to drive that engagement?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of our objectives for sure. I think if I had £1 for every marketing person who said storylines, athletes as heroes, I think I'd be a very rich man. It's kind of like, that's great. Yeah, we all want that. I mean, everyone wants that. But the key is, how do you actually do that? Look, we definitely have objectives to build the profiles of our athletes, that's for sure. Now, are our athletes household names today? Probably not, but I think Ben Ainsley's a household name in the UK. And how does Ben continue to build his profile? I think he's got a pretty significant profile. But then, for example, Pete Burling, he wouldn't be familiar with a UK audience, but you kind of walk down the street in Auckland and, he's mobbed by quite a lot of people. So there are, what I'd say about SailGP, which is different to other kind of properties that are the kind of in our cohort, is we've got the best athletes in our sport. I think that's important. So the best sailors in the world are competing in SailGP. So there's not kind of another platform that they're on, and we haven't got like a B squad of athletes. These are the best, and so that's been important. But yeah, there's still the kind of point of how do you get them to break through, and that's a longer term vision. I think that's how do we generate more consistency as a product? How are we? I think that's a much broader topic within sailing. How can we be consistent with our calendar, and how can we be delivering broadcast products on a consistent basis that then these athletes start to cut through?
I mean, we've seen the model used quite a few times. It's part of a broadcast packaging. You can have your linear, more centralized piece, which is CBS and TNT picking it up, and then you have the behind the scenes, the additional content with the Primes and the Disneys, creating those fantastic levels of exposure for personalities to really shine through. This to me seems like a fantastic sport to create a show like a Drive to Survive in, where you have the following of a season. It's speed, it's high intensity, it's cool, it's crash. It's got everything to really succeed in that. Is this an objective? I'm sure you've obviously had conversations. Is this something you want to do, or is there?
Absolutely. I mean, if we could cut that up and send that to the executives at Netflix, that'd be
anytime
a great little clip. Again, it's kind of like everyone just do a Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Well, every sport in the world wants to do a Drive to Survive, and it's okay. How do you build something that, again, Netflix is a business; they need to drive subscribers. So how do you build something that drives subscribers for Netflix or Amazon or Disney? We've actually have a series that we've now set up, and will be coming out this year, and we've got a good distribution partner, so we're on the journey. I think we've got a couple of more ideas up our sleeve that I think will kind of take us from where we are today to more of a mainstream property and kind of get more of our athletes into the kind of, I guess, broader sporting domain.
Completely agree. I'm so pleased you said it, because so many just think, oh yeah, great, we'll copy what's been done, we'll just create it, and then it's gonna be valuable. But for you, again, integrating, by the sounds of it, you can integrate the team ownership, you can integrate the athletes, maybe the brand participations become more prevalent. You've got, again, the exciting events. There does seem to be all the right ingredients to do kind of F1 on water, or I mean, look, there's a ton of really interesting stories, and there's all kinds of things that go on behind the scenes, as you can imagine. And certainly, my phone blows up after an event with team owners, and Russell's phone blows up. We need to do this or we need to do that, and then there's the growing pains of a league as well. There's a whole. There's a whole story there, but we're prime, we're ready for that. Again, it's, as you say, we don't just want to copy something that's gone before. It'd be great. I mean, if we had Drive to Survive 2, happy days. But I don't know. I kind of sense that the market is kind of moving on a little bit from that now. And it's, you've had the Drive to Survive, you've had Breakpoint, you've had these other kind of docu-series, and it's what's the next thing for content? And that's kind of what we're trying to look at. I'm not saying we've got the magic formula, but I think it's important to start down that road for sure. And we actually have our own kind of behind the scenes series called Racing on the Edge that we do with Rolex, who have kind of help us fund that. And that gets us a pretty strong viewership. We distribute that with our broadcast partners as well as on YouTube, and that gets strong ratings, and so it's almost like that's something that we've been able to do in house. And really, how do we actually do a kind of more premium version of that? The final one before we jump into a little bit of a quick fire. I'm really interested to understand your position, I guess, within that broader sailing landscape as well, where, you're interacting with the America's Cup. We obviously have the Olympics, fantastic platform, as with many sports, where people engage quite briefly with a sport and then maybe don't follow on for the years in between. How does this whole environment work? What are those relationships like, I guess, between all the different properties?
Fragmented would probably be the word I'd use. Look, we have a great relationship with World Sailing, who are the governing body for sailing. They kind of love what we're doing. They love that what we're kind of introducing new fans into the sport of sailing, and that we're a special event of World Sailing. So kind of we have their endorsement. But I think that the Olympics has a challenge actually in sailing. I think, I'd throw a question back to you. I mean, did you watch the sailing in Paris?
Not religiously, no.
No, and
I watched it when it's, I think interestingly here, especially when we had the reduction this time in the viewing hours, I noticed post it that was something that I hadn't really seen much of.
Yeah, and look, it's hard to understand. And and what we try and do with sailing is make it super easy to understand. We have the kind of graphical overlay, and it needs to be understandable for somebody who's into sports to go, okay, I'll get what's happening here. Whereas I think we found in the Olympics, it's just really hard for the casual sports fan to engage with. Again, you go back to Ben Ainslie in London, or Weymouth as it was. I mean, do you remember any of the races that Ben won?
No, but I do remember him. I firmly remember him winning.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't know.
You don't know what happened in the race. Whereas Jessica Ennis, Mo Farah, we all remember that. In Paris, I watched street dancing and climbing, and it's like, oh wow, all these new sports. So sailing's got a really good opportunity, I think, to kind of grab a new audience that watches the Olympics. But again, you need to make that an easy sport to understand, so that more people are going to tune in when that's on, and then athletes and then stars get created from there. So and we work with World Sailing. We want to help that kind of progress. But certainly it's a challenge that I think the sport needs to face. But more broadly across sailing, there's just so many classes, and there's so many different disciplines within the sport. So as a result, it's so fragmented, and the World Sailing do a great job of kind of bringing that together. But if you're the governing body of table tennis, your kind of world championship is 2 people playing table tennis, whereas in sailing there's all these different classes. There's displacement boats, there's foiling boats, there's all these different things, and so it's kind of quite a complex sport to govern in many ways, and we're almost like the simple version of that, and certainly we see ourselves as sitting at the elite level of the sport.
And so do you work with an Olympic movement, for example, to then, if you're creating this passion and drive, to try and make sure that that can follow through? Are there relationships there where you can elevate sailing together, I guess?
Definitely. And definitely with World Sailing, we'd love to do more of that, I'd say. But also, again, going back to the franchise or team system, each of our teams works closely with the governing body, and each, so the Spanish team, for example, they've created what they call the foiling pathway in Spain, and the Spanish federation is supporting them with that, and they have a close relationship there. So it's almost like, how do that Olympic pathway then kind of turn onto another pathway that takes those athletes into SailGP? And we'd love to do more of that. Obviously, there's only so much we can do as an organization. We've got a lot on, in that we're trying to build a property that kind of is commercially successful in its own right. So I think that we'll hopefully see more of that coming in the future.
Amazing. Can we do a quick fire round?
Yeah, let's go for it.
I mean, they're generally not that quick fire, but if you're going through the sale process now, if you could bring one owner in to take one of these teams, who would you like to see enter?
That's a great question. Ryan Reynolds.
What do you like about what he's done in sport, I guess, that makes that? Because that's quite quick. Normally would be people would be dallying.
I mean, you just have to see what they've done with Wrexham. It's incredible. So I mean, that would be
storytelling.
Yeah, it's athletes as heroes. It's storytelling. It's how they've transformed the club, but really getting to the heart of the community.
Well, I think that's what makes that so. You mentioned how do you do something differently?
Yeah,
there are episodes of Welcome to Wrexham that don't feature a football.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's not actually a football show. It's a entertainment product around a sport.
Yeah. So and look,
great.
You've seen the success of Wrexham on and off the field. Yeah. So what a journey they've been on.
Great answer. What do you see as a untapped revenue stream that you can take advantage of, or hopefully uncover in the coming years?
I'd probably a couple of answers to that. I think we've not been surprised, but we've seen a huge increase in ticketing income. And as I mentioned in Auckland, if you look at the pictures from our Auckland event, 20,000 people on site. It's a lot of infrastructure that you obviously have to build, but it's an income stream that has kind of, I guess, grown more quickly than we expected. So,
what does it cost me if I want to come to an event?
You can come to the Portsmouth event in July for £60.
Okay. And that gets
that's grandstands. You have your seat, and you kind of have the race stadium, and you see the boats right in front of you in Southsea and Portsmouth. Yeah. But then we have other products. So we have kind of a premium product where it's more kind of F&B included, and that's typically kind of £300-400, and it's kind of more of a, I guess, not corporate vibe, but more of a kind of call it après sale kind of like cool vibe. But you get all your drinks included, champagne, the whole works, and then we have our sponsor areas. Those incomes, those areas are something that has grown significantly. And then I think future wise, looking more at gaming, and how is betting becoming something that is interesting? Because certainly we've had studies done that our sport actually lends itself quite nicely to that kind of environment, that gaming environment, because anybody can win any race and they've all got the same kit. So it's almost like a handicap in horse racing in a way. That's something that we're looking to explore as well.
Especially if you've already got all the data.
So we've already got the data. We've actually got a team who generates odds internally now anyway, and we've seen Bet365 have taken it, and we're hoping that can be something that gets really interesting. I think it kind of gives people more of a reason to get into sport and care about the sport, quite frankly.
When you set something new up, there's always a lot of challenges to overcome. What was the hardest thing that you had to navigate to get this to where it is now?
Yeah, I think it was the harsh reality of, we'd been commercializing the America's Cup, and, that it was a known property, and we kind of set this up, and, kind of Larry and Russell were like, let's go on this. And we were like, okay, we'll come up with a name and so forth. And then you kind of go to your first pitch and you say, okay, we'll SailGP. And you get these blank looks. You still do, by the way, today. And, and that's part of the building process. But it was the harsh reality of we've built nothing, and nobody knows who we are. And that was, from day one, okay, how do you overcome that? And you don't just do that, overnight. It's kind of takes years of work to get there. So, that was the initial challenge. And I think, there's also the technical side of things, and setting up those facilities, building boats, building the logistics. That's a whole lot of work, and that doesn't often get the kind of it's not the credit that it deserves. It's not the we've got hundreds of technical people who work in SailGP do an amazing job. And they're not front and center of the camera. They've built the boats, they maintain the boats. So really, kind of building that team centrally has been a huge challenge. But we've got a great team behind us there.
A question from the audience. One of our most passionate fans, my wife. How do you move the boats around?
Actually, when the AC50s were built in for the America's Cup in Bermuda, that they were purposely built to take on tour. So they're 50 feet in length, but the bow comes off, so it goes to 40 foot. So it just slides into a 40-foot shipping container. So they're kind of like a Meccano set. They're pretty big boats, but you kind of pull them to pieces within kind of 24 hours of a race, go into a 40-foot container, and then off we go. We've actually chartered a ship this year that just kind of, because the shipping industry has been really challenging. So if we're reliant on getting from place to, kind of stakes are a little bit higher than they once were. So we've actually kind of de-risked ourselves and chartered a ship. We work with DP World, who are our logistics provider, on that. And so kind of we have about 140-foot containers. So they, so the ship kind of pulls up to the port, containers go on, off they go to the next race.
Efficient.
But it's a huge, it goes back to the point before. It's a huge operation, and we've got some significant expertise in that area. Again, it's a team that unsung heroes in a way. You kind of, it's not often that the logistics team get on the podium and take an applause, but they do a fantastic job, as do all our ops teams.
So that's a centralized cost, I guess.
Yes,
up to the team.
Yeah. So again, if you had 12 teams doing that by themselves, then they'd all go off and do different deals, and they'd all be on different ships, whereas we just centralize it. We do it all for them. And obviously you get economies of scale as a result.
We mentioned Larry Ellison a few times. It's amazing when you have people from outside of sport come involved. What is is there anything that you've learned particularly from being in and around him, or in and around a company that he's so involved with? What's that learning that you've taken?
Yeah, I think to think commercially, it's that kind of commercial is the mindset. And how do you make the company work, and why are you doing these things, and do they drive commercial value? And that's been instilled in me from day one, from Russell and Larry, I think, around our organization. If we're doing something, it needs to drive value, and that's been clear for all of our organization. And we kind of, we don't have committees. We kind of make decisions quickly as a result of that, and that again drives that commercial value. I also think it's a no bullshit environment. You can't go in and bullshit Russell, and Russell can't go in and bullshit Larry, because it's not going to work. They're very smart individuals, and as I say, super commercially minded, and then that drives us all as an organization.
Amazing.
Annie, I've loved it. Thank you so much for coming on. It's, as I said at the start, a brand new area, and it's fascinating to get some real insight into it. I'm sure everyone will have loved it.
No worries. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.